A very good evening to you at this hour on the business desk right here on Channel 405 Newzroom Afrika. The Ithala Bank suspension will remain in place. That's until the entity meets the conditions set by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. Ithala has applied for the Financial Services Tribunal to reconsider the suspension over its failure to comply with the requirements of the Financial Advisory and Intermediary Service Act set up to protect the interest of customers. Under the suspension, Ithala is allowed to continue offering financial services, but is barred from conducting new business. The entity also has to prove solvency as a measure to ensure that an FSP is able to meet liquidity needs without prejudicing the interests of clients and other stakeholders. Executive Director at Denker Capital, Kooyman, speaks to us about these matters. Thank you so much for your time, Kokkie. It sounds complex, but really based on the license and regulatory framework of Ithala Bank, where does the justification stand for the suspension?
Yeah, so what makes Ithala special is that indeed it had a special exemption notice from the Reserve Bank, which is highly exceptional, and that's been in place for quite a while. So the main thing is that this did allow it to take deposits, but that notice was given in 22 that it was going to be under review. Where we are now is that it seems the investigation showed that the financial... Yeah.
I can still hear you, Kokkie. I'm not sure if good. You are still explaining as to how we got to the part where exemption may have been an issue with regards to a thin line that Ithala was walking here.
Yes. So it seems that something went wrong with, I think, either depositors or with, it seems, the payment they received from the feeding scheme. And that as a result of that, and we can speculate on that, but as a result of that, the financial soundness, as it's called in technical terms, the financial soundness was being questioned, and the financial soundness in this case seems to have been a solvency issue. A solvency issue normally means that the bank hasn't got enough liquidity or capital to ensure that other depositors might not be jeopardized. Okay, it's a lot of big words, but essentially, if you just think of a bank needs to have a certain amount of capital, and then it has depositors, and the combination of the bank and deposits is used to make loans. In this case of Ithala, it made loans to the service providers who, in terms of, let's say, the full school feeding system, they were paying service providers to be able to get the raw materials, whatever they needed to provide food to the schools, if I can use that example. But
Pardon me for interjecting there, Kokkie, because you touch on a vital point there. The reason why I'm coming in at this stage is to ask, really, the solvency of Ithala. Does it have a solid case, especially as it's already been indicated that there will be an application for that suspension to be reconsidered? Do they have a leg to stand on to say, well, on paper we look good and our operations are still within the prescripts of that exemption being granted? Yep.
We just don't know at this stage. It doesn't seem to be enough information, and our time was a bit short. But at this stage, we don't know. I mean, they actually went and tried to get the Financial Services Board to reverse their decision, and the Tribunal actually refused that application for a reversal. The Tribunal will have seen the evidence. And obviously, it's concerned that I think most probably some of their clients haven't been paying them fast enough, or the school feeding program is not paying them soon enough. The bottom line is the cash they need to make new loans is insufficient because of either not following up, clients are not paying, or clients themselves being in lending clients, that is, themselves being in financial difficulties. So someone has to step in from the outside, either the KwaZulu-Natal government or another third party, to temporarily restore the financial soundness of Ithala Bank.
On that latter part, much of a comparison has been made with the likes of the failed VBS Mutual Bank, and it also came up in the press briefing that Itala executives held earlier today. Let's draw a distinction between the two because the operating licenses are different. However, it does seem to beg the validity or the point to make around where it is that at a prudential level, at a fiduciary duty level, there are holes that can be poked in both scenarios.
Yeah. So I've obviously been trying to read up as much as I can about the current situation. But everything I've read so far doesn't seem to indicate that there is fraud involved. We don't know yet, but on the VBS case, there was definitely fraud. There was, in other words, a deposit being paid to organizations and to individuals as loans, and those loans weren't being repaid. And it seems on the investigations on VBS that the intention was, it seems, never to repay those loans. And remember, a bank needs to receive payment on its loans to be able to make new loans, else it puts the depositors under pressure. Well, they can't repay their depositors, which was the case with VBS. With Itala, it doesn't seem to be the case on the information we've got so far, that it more seems that maybe the loans they made and the parties to which those loans were made are under financial difficulty. So at least, again, from what I've read, it doesn't seem to be fraud involved. It might have been poor management or timeous alerting of action to get the creditors or the people to whom, the organization to whom the loans were made, to repay faster. But so it should be resolvable. But yeah, the Financial Conduct Authority and the FSB cannot allow the bank to operate under the current circumstances, because then the depositors are under threat. And you don't want depositors to worry that they're not going to get their money back, because then you have what is called a run on a bank. Then depositors run to the bank, literally, or these days it's on the internet, and withdraw their deposits, and then the bank can't operate anymore. So I think we good of the authorities to, at the moment, show depositors that they are protecting their deposits and they don't have to worry at this stage.
Speaking of protecting customers, what then is to be said about, of course, the Ithala Bank having an appetite with more than 1 million accounts there, from small businesses to rural individuals. But one of the biggest concerns is how a suspension then impacts those who are customers to that entity.
Yeah, it seems at the moment they're not allowed to do any new business, but they could continue servicing current clients. So I'm not sure of the status quo after Friday's application not being allowed, but it does seem that they can actually continue doing that. The alternative is, as what happened with VBS, when it was placed under supervision, they actually went to Nedbank and asked Nedbank to step in and to provide service as well. Then the bank actually, in this case, Nedbank, does take some risk, but will charge a fee for that. In this case, I suppose Itala could as well go to one of the large banks and say, will you step in, make the payments for us or for our clients, and obviously for a fee, and you go on risk for that. So there are alternative scenarios. As I said, either another bank who's got the wherewithal to immediately step in, or a third party comes in and makes up for the shortfall that there is in their financial statements.
Quickly, Kokkie, as a parting shot, what does this, as another case study, really illustrate within South Africa's authorities, the banking sector in particular, from the likes of the Reserve Bank to the Financial Service Conduct Authority? Yeah,
I think it does show that the Financial Service Authorities, the board as well, and the Prudential Authority are on top of this, and so at least for depositors, you can sleep well at night. You know that the Reserve Bank is watching out for you. but also that banking is a high-risk business, and if you make loans and they don't get repaid, then there is risk to the bank, and that's why you need a bank supervision authority to make sure that loans are always done properly and followed up, and especially in cases like this these entities are important for rural societies, and I think they do fulfill a role. So I think it's good that they are monitored and the Reserve Bank steps in where necessary.
Thank you so much, as always, for your input. Kokkie Kooyman is with Denker Capital, giving us analysis of the developments around Ithala Bank and the suspension of its operating license by the FSCA. That's how we wrap it up, at least at this hour on the business desk, and take a look at market indicators.